section. Today we are again in Houdini, as you maybe can see and or figure out by the looks of the software on the screen. Today I want to do something with Boolean fracture, I think it is called. I never quite know. And I think it is quite an interesting technique to, well, have one whole and fracture it in quite some interesting pieces. But the way it has been done, I think just, makes or breaks the whole thing. So either makes it look quite interesting or it doesn't. But I think before I'm actually doing so, I do want to make sure that the stream is actually working. Because as you might know, or as you might not know, I am always, when I'm recording, I'm actually live streaming it. And yes, it does work. Wonderful. No, I should not do this. I'm live streaming it. Why? Because the file size of the downloaded video then is way smaller. Like just, tremendously small, and way smaller than it could ever be when I'm recording it locally. So yeah. Let's actually start. I want to start with a box, and it's going to be a rather quick one today. I do want to give it a few divisions. It doesn't really matter, and I always like to have something more elongated, something that is taller than it is wide. Why? Just because it most often fits like the frame of all the social media sites and or formats a bit better, or dimensions a bit better of the videos. And of course, when you're primarily doing things for, well, I don't know, screens, like not portable screens, but horizontally, how do you call it? Landscape screens. Well, you know what I mean. 16 by 9 and not 9 by 16. Anyway, so we're having this, and we're having the Boolean fracture. When we're using the Boolean fracture, we are having the geometry 2 fracture and also the cutting surface. So for the cutting surface, we are willing to take a grid, and well, it should be as big as possible, I think, and we might just see what it does. So there is the line. Then we're using a copy and transform. I think it does work when the grid is actually not fully cutting through the surface, but it might make some weird things. I do think to remember that it was a bit of a weird stuff, but well, anyway, let's have a look at this. Shift A, by the way, is frame all. And I do want it to be something like this. And I also want to rotate it maybe in this way, like 10, and also in this way, like 10, so that we're having something like this. So when we have a look at what we did there, you see the cuts are rather bad. So exploded view. We're gonna take the exploded view and see what it does. So this is what it does. And of course, no, I don't want to have that. Of course, we can then just move them up and down and whatever. And as you maybe then can see by sizing it, or it maybe actually needs to be like big. So big enough to cut it fully, because there is like a line, but it's not going through, and so it's not cutting it. Anyway, I think you already see that it does create some interesting shapes, and or some interesting, well, let's call them subdivisions or fractures of this original geometry. And especially by using this exploded view, I think it can be used quite well. Of course, I think you can do it like this too, so that you're only exploding it into one direction, and you might be able to do some other attribute stuff there, which yeah, what is this? Well, anyway, that might be useful, or might also not be useful. I don't really know. What I think could also be interesting is having an for each and the number I actually always kind of do it the wrong way, but when we're doing it like this, and you know, maybe we actually go down with it a tiny bit. And so we're doing this, and we're doing that, and we're doing this, and then we're having a look at what is happening there. We're having already 10 things here. Might be the case that we have to go to fetch feedback, and now it is loading and being buggy. So it does something. As you can see, it does something. So it takes an input and does the same operation again that we're having in between the beginning and the end, and which can be useful, as I have actually figured out, to go over pieces. For example, the spooling fracture is producing pieces, so every fracture is one piece, one piece. And as well as, let me think, what was this one that I was going over? You can also, by copy to points, like copy to points, you can say that it should create an piece attribute, which then can use by connectivity and, well, easier attribute by piece or something. Let's see what we can find by piece. Attribute from pieces. No, it was the wrong one. Piece. Transform pieces connect. Well, I might have been wrong. But by connectivity, well, I do not remember it fully, but you can then, by stringing it, figure out which piece is what, and then you could also, for example, use the attribute visualizer. Maybe we're actually going to do it afterwards. What I want to not do maybe is the for each thing, because I believe that it might make things a bit too slow, and we might do this, and we might actually do that and keep it a bit lower, and let's have a normal scale of 1, and let's see what we can do with that. I actually like this configuration here. I don't know why, and I think that there is just definitely a better way maybe to use this quote unquote technique. Well, I do like this. Let's actually use that. And for animations, for example, you could just play with this slider there and see where it's going. So this should have created like a few pieces, and we might be able to piece attribute name. Okay. I think connectivity, point cloud geometry. Yeah, I might be wrong there. Anyway, and we might be able to string. Okay, and then visualizer, and then what I do want to visualize is the name. And I don't see anything. And I don't want to do it by color, but I want to do it by tag or by marker. Maybe. Yeah. So there we can see that all of this, and this is going over points. Maybe. Could be the case. Scope. Well, I don't know. You might be able to. There we go. Primitives. Or detail? No. Auto. Well, anyway. As you can see, there we're having piece 25. We're having piece 24, 25. What is this? This is 58 apparently, and so on and so forth. And this can be used, for example, by, for going over like this piece thing, like for each, and then taking every single piece as an input. And then, for example, I don't know, I think theoretically like rotating every single piece by a certain degree instead of just using the whole geometry or something like this. Maybe, I don't know, you know, there might be some way usefuler ways to use that. But anyway, so now we know that these are pieces. Nice. I've actually tried to have one piece and then also have one path for the certain piece that is deforming it. It didn't really work in the way that I wanted to, actually, but I think it can work in that way. For example, well, not for example, but I think it could be the case that it works in this way, so that you're having like multiple curves and also multiple geometries, and you only want like every single piece or every single geometry being connected to this one curve, so that this one curve, also only this one curve, deforms this geometry or whatever you want to achieve. Anyway, let's get back to the exploded view. What we definitely can also do there is having a polywire, which I think quite often adds something, and we are merging this just to, no, this is not what I wanted to have. We are merging them like this and like that, and then we have something ugly, making a bit thinner there. Nice. We could definitely also do this and then have maybe that's some sort of a facade. Might be interesting, might also not be interesting. Of course, you could also then blur, which I'm actually quite often doing, blur this thing so that you are having nothing. Nice. And then, you know, maybe having a transform thing and making it way smaller so that you can actually see it again, or maybe even a bit bigger. And now you're having something like this, which might be interesting. I don't know. Let's maybe keep this box there and get rid of the blur and also get rid of the transform. Might be interesting just to see in terms of an animation, and of course it might also make sense to animate this to then what do I want to say, like create many different alterations of this one design. This should actually be even thinner, I guess. Okay, cool. What I think we can also do is, of course, maybe I think that I might have done this with the VDB subtract. Well, I never know. Anyway, by using this and the other thing, and then seeing what is left, and then you're having like what is left, and maybe then using this as an input. So yeah, I don't know, didn't really work the way I wanted to. Edge length, okay, cool. Yeah, definitely probably works better with a VDB. Maybe let's actually do this VDB from polygons, and we're duplicating this by alt dragging it. We're having this and we're having that, and then we're having VDB subtract, and then we are using this one, and we're doing this and that and the other thing, and now we see there is nothing, and I think that one should change this. Yeah, looks good. And then probably do 0, 1, and also there 0, 1 maybe. This actually looks also quite interesting. And now we're having that, which should maybe be the rest of this. Could work, I don't know. And then we're doing VDB convert like this, and back to polygons, and maybe we are kind of subdividing it afterwards to make it a bit smoother. We might actually also use a blur to make it smoother. Oops, something like this. And then when we're putting it into the merge, it somehow does what I thought it might do. And I think actually for the original design there wasn't that much that I added. What I've also seen is that when you're having the Boolean fracture, it does create an inside and outside space. And so you can also use this for your advantage by selecting the outside, for example. And then you're having something like this. Or you're using the inside and not the outside. And then you're having something like this. For whatever reason, what if we actually Boolean the exploded view? What if we're using another exploded view? Ah, okay. That is interesting. So you could like do something like this, and maybe then it would be cool to be able to... I actually only chosen the inside, but I'm still having those lines there. Have I actually... the inside? This is everything. Oh, now I get it. We could actually also take a null, maybe, or a group would make more sense. Group, and then having this and that, and then we're choosing the inside to just have a look at the inside, and we might also just choose the outside to see actually no difference. What the fuck? Inside, outside. Well, I do know that you know that it might be useful to know that. I mean, in this case, it is actually quite interesting, because when I'm now choosing for the polywire the outside, we're getting something like this. So we're still having like this pieces inside, even with a thickness, maybe. No, not really, but we might add a thickness. We might add a thickness, and this thickness might just create something pleasing. Or maybe also not, really depending on what you think. And this exploded view is actually also quite the interesting thing. Interesting. But what I think strikes me a bit is that when I'm using the polywire without this now, that there is still like geometry inside, these pieces. Which normally is not the case, for example, when I'm using a box. What happened just now? When I'm using a box and a polywire, actually nothing happens for this reason. This should happen, like no faces. But for some reason, like this. But when I'm choosing the outside, apparently, also the inside is like, as far as I understand now, I might be able to sort those two. What if when I'm sorting that? Point group, primitive group. When I'm just choosing the outside and then doing that, does this make a difference? No, it doesn't. Cool. Nice. Thanks a lot. There might be some way to sort it. But I think might also just be interesting to use this, and then maybe having a thicken. Maybe then having a thicken, yeah, maybe then having thicken. Something like this, so that you just have a bit of a thickness. Might create some sort of an interesting effect. Of course, there are definitely other people that are doing cooler stuff with it than I'm doing there. but I think it might be an interesting way to just, you know, get around things. What you maybe could also be doing is using a pop network with some location, pop location, maybe not that many points, like 10 or something, and then having pop wind, and this pop wind has some sort of amplitude, and yeah, wonderful. So then we use copy 2 points, like target points there, and we're using the grid there, and now we're using this as the fracture thing. And depending on how many points, I might actually just also reduce this to 5 or something. We can always change that. Also, the noise might be a bit too wild, but now it is changing actually quite nicely. And when we're maybe having a look at this, and oops, Shift A, there we're also seeing like this this VDB thing in the middle. We might actually 0.01. No, this was too much. Also too much. Well, anyway, it's gonna be 0 then. And reshape, I think, yes. There we go. And we eroded maybe. Subtract. Dilated, open, close. This was not the right one. Smooth. I might actually also choose a smooth. Which actually also creates something rather interesting. Also something interesting. That is now also changing over time. And of course we maybe use the blur here, maybe even a bit more of it, to see things changing more. And it might actually be... It would definitely be nice to have like this polywire be always the negative of the other thing, which we might be doing by just a Boolean operation. But I think I tried that before, right? Don't even remember. Let's see. We're having is it this? We might actually also do that. Unless it's not really useful, and I don't think it is really useful. But this should therefore also change over time, right? Which is also interesting, at least I think. So where's the polywire? This is the polywire, and this is not changing over time. Well, there we're having the Boolean operation, and so we're choosing this to be the first one and this to be the second one. And what are we having now? Nothing cool. Question is why this was this and this was that. It should actually be the exploded view, shouldn't it be? Yeah, it should be. And it actually does something, but And also, it's really interesting. There's like some sort of a thing there. I might be VDBing in VDBing from Polygon. I don't really know what the issue there is. Convert VDB. And then plugging it in here. And we definitely have to go 001 or something. And then converting it to a polygon, and it might do something. The question is, no, I do now get it. It makes sense. I mean, transform. I do want to transform it and make it slightly, yeah, there we go. Slightly smaller, because of course when you're having two things that are having the same size, then, well, it's not gonna cut anything away from either of them. Okay, and there we go, and I think it is actually quite nice. Might even be great to have this to 1, and we're scaling like everything but the height to something else, which may or may not be a good idea, but for most angles it might be quite cool. Let's maybe not use the smoothing thing. And now we have maybe some quite interesting animation, and maybe quite some useful tool to create some architectural concepts maybe, and so on and so forth. Of course, it might be interesting to have more subdivisions, and or like when you're having this geometry there, maybe also having like a few holes in there, or windows. And I'm just thinking if there is some sort of an easy way to do so. Is there an easy way to do so? I mean, you could definitely also do a polywire there, and then blurring it. It's gonna make it a bit more organic. And maybe actually also checking preserve volume, so that we're not having this problem again. And then having more segments, and also more divisions doesn't really work. But now we're having some sort of a soup of things. So maybe it should be like the other way around, that you're having like the full geometry in the middle or something. Well, I don't really know. What I also just thought about, and I actually really disliked. Let's get rid of it. And let's have this again. Or just some other elements. Of course, one would have to I mean, this might be some interesting inside space. I don't know, just thinking. What would probably also make sense is to edit the behavior of those points by maybe having a pop wop. I think it actually goes somewhere, I never know. And then having normalize and add. So we're having this and that, and I do know that you're using this with volumes, but you know, maybe let's try to see if this also works in that way. maybe it already does something. Okay, yeah, it does something. We might actually have a look at this, and we might actually also have a trail there. A trail there, I think, with like 100, so that one can quite easily see what is happening there. And it's basically working like a star, and I don't really know if I want to have that. So we might add some sort of a noise. It's probably going to be a curl noise, and we are normalizing this curl noise. And as you can see, it is like, maybe we need way less roughness and way less turbulence. And maybe let's see what is happening there. Yeah, something's happening, and I definitely should uncheck this and see that thing, or better this thing. There might be some interesting configurations, and there might also be, well, actually not that interesting. Would definitely be nicer to have it a bit more smooth. So we might actually get rid of this normalized thing and see if this makes it better. And actually, no, it does not really. Maybe the attenuation is the thing. Yes, it probably was. So I think, let's see, might actually also already do the trick. And I think this is then gonna be it for what I want to show here. Well, this is nice. I do think that it might be quite useful to, you know, use this fracture thing, and also by understanding that every single fracture can be one piece that can have, I don't know, a certain color or a certain way of moving or whatever, and it's actually now breaking. But yeah, I think that this is actually the only way in which I have used it, and there wasn't anything else, I guess. Of course, I think like the pop simulation is one thing that should be optimized so that you know, it does not create too many you know, very small pieces, and or maybe pieces that you can't really work with then, or whatever. But what I've actually learned now is that now it is breaking, that the fracture and the Boolean operations, so all the Boolean operations, actually work quite well in many other or some other softwares, 3D softwares. They didn't really work that well. But yeah, anyway, that being said, I'm